So this is my virtual trade show, if you can. It's the booth that we would have had, or some of it anyhow, if we were at NAB. And what we do is, many of you know, is to control daylight for studios that have exterior views in order to give the best possible view of the world while giving the best possible view of our talent. And to do that, and actually, we've got a pretty nice view of Lady Liberty right now, but right now she's being, she's got 3 f-stops of light reduction in order to make her look okay. And so if I take them out, she's going to blow out. Not only did she blow out, but I got dark. So that, as you can see, it's a challenge to get the lighting right. And so by controlling the sunlight, which is our greatest source of light, we can get the best possible shots in our studios. Again, bring down a little bit of ND. And the outside's acceptable. I'm still pretty unacceptable. If I bring down some more ND, I should get to be acceptable, as well as the outdoors looking good. One of the things that we're doing now, in addition to rolling NDs, are green screens, so that that same real estate of the windows, so if you've got a wall of windows in your studio, can become useful at other times of the day for other purposes. Everything's controlled by DMX typically, which allows you to control, for instance, a studio in New York from Bristol, Connecticut, for some of you who are here. Or equally, you could control it from around the world. That's the nutshell version of what we do. And other things to note, installations always by our own staff worldwide. I don't know what else to tell you. That probably sums it up pretty well. If anybody's got something to contribute, I don't want to waste a ton of everybody's time. So unmute yourselves and ask a question, or
Rick?
Or yeah, hi, Ara.
Hi. I'm just curious as to examples of extreme brightness differentials. How broad a range of differences can you handle from the interior to the exterior?
Well, the largest we've done is going from no ND up to an ND 2.1. ND 2.1 is, off the top of my head, I think 6 f-stops, which is pretty tremendous. We found that to be necessary in San Francisco with a more or less eastern exposure for CNBC, looking over the Oakland Bay Bridge, and in Iraq, where, as you can only imagine, it gets very bright. But we could theoretically do more than that. And in those particular instances, with 3 gels, I think it was, we've got every f-stop from 1 f-stop to 6 f-stops.
When you did that, how many layers of neutral density film did you need?
That's 3 layers in that instance. So I think, let me think about this. ND3, ND6, and ND 1.2 gets us there.
Rick, that's what we started out in the Vegas studio, right?
Oh, now you're pushing it. I'm thinking, Joe, and maybe Pedro, who's in here, can also chime in. I think that's what we did end up with there for maximum range. I think the original discussion from your guys was 3, 6, and 9, and I suggested skipping the 9 and going to 1.2.
Yeah, and I know we were
in Vegas was 3, 6, and 1.2, because 3 and 6 together you get the 9.
Right.
That's why we had 3 layers in there, and we had a little more range on it.
And then we were tested that scrim to see if we could reduce some of the reflection
Correct.
at night.
And that was caused substantially by bright scenery on the edges of the studio.
Yeah.
So we're going to replace eventually the ND.6 with a 2 stop scrim. And the scrim will be in front of the other NDs to help bring down the reflection.
Yeah.
How large a window can you handle on this?
Largest we've done is 16 feet wide and about 10 feet tall. It's not something I would highly recommend, but it did work. It's just, it's pushing the range of the material when we get that large.
I have a question for James. Are you in Hawaii, or who is that backdrop?
No, I wish. No, it's just it's where I'd like to be right now. Thanks,
Okay.
though. I'm with Click Spring.
Okay.
Actually, it's since you brought it up, 16 feet wide, Rick. What was the roller mechanism for that? Did you custom build those too, or did you use like what do you feel safe in terms of a width with the roller mechanisms?
Well, what we did
without like the bunching and all that kind of problem.
Yeah, no, we used a mechanism which is safe to about 22 feet. The bigger issue is the deflection in the tube, and what's acceptable in our world is not what's acceptable in the rest of the world, and we're just more critical. So in that particular instance, we used 130 millimeter tube, so 5 1/4 inches roughly.
Right. Okay.
Big tube.
Yeah, it's big, so you need a lot of room if you're stacking them.
Correct. In that particular instance, we had it. We quoted something recently doing something similar, and we're at the cusp to going up to 150 millimeter tube at this point for that. So, we're okay where we are, but I would, if they go another 6 or 8 inches, I'm going to push it to the 150 millimeter tube.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
What is the ability, Rick, to have a scrim, a green screen, a photograph within the units, or how many?
Good question.
If we have the space, we can theoretically stack as many as you want. We get into issues with depth in that each roll takes about where they come down over a window takes about 1 inch. So if we put 8 rolls, we've got 8 inches of stack there, which is just a whole lot.
Yeah.
Typically, 3 or 4 is more typical. Interestingly, and for what it's worth, and I don't know if it'll become important or not, we recently sourced a motor for a project that is running at 90 RPM, which, while it's not quiet and it's not readily controllable by DMX, it does allow us to drop something in very fast if we want to. Putting that in sort of normal terms, if we had, let's say, a 2 1/4 inch roller, it'll run 8 feet in about 8 seconds.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Rick, what is a typical time frame for getting one of these projects started to go through the design and construction and installation?
I'd like to see 8 to 12 weeks, and I'd like to see us get in at the beginning of the project. And thank you, Joe, for that on the last one, because that helps us when we get to the finish line, not having surprises or problems for any of us. But can it be done faster? Yeah, it can be done faster if we need to.
And you've installed these in broad swaths of the world, right? Location isn't an issue generally for you.
No, but it does change the timing factors in terms of transporting something. You know, in the US, it's fairly easy for me to get something coast to coast in a week. We go to, China. It was the last thing we did there. I think it took a week and a half, actually, from the time it shipped until it arrived in our hands. And somebody had to know who to pay off.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it wasn't clearing customs. I was not the one who knew who to pay off.
One more question.
How long did
Oh, I'm
how
sorry.
long did
Someone
it
else?
take for Dubai? Oh,
So
when we did the
Dubai,
Dubai MBN studios, how long did that take to get stuff there?
again, customs is a pain in the neck there to some degree, but I'm thinking that we were probably a week and a half to 2 weeks until it was in our hands there. Pedro, is that what you recall also?
Yeah, I was about to say about Dubai. I do remember. I don't remember if that was the right time frame, but it was something like that. And I do remember another challenge. It was about regions in Dubai. In terms of customs and actually to move the product in Dubai itself.
Right.
Okay.
That's true. It was part of it was going from a standard zone into a free zone, and there was an issue with that. And nobody ever
I
could
don't
explain it. It
remember
just
that.
was, huh?
I don't even. Yeah, I don't even remember that problem, but I'm sure that there was a lot of things like that.
Yeah, it was just, it seemed like stupidity. It's like, guys, nobody's saying that you have to cut the duties on it. We're paying the duties. Just move it. And they couldn't seem to do that anyhow.
Another question. What is the longevity of an installation before any kind of maintenance typically is required?
For the most part, they run well for years with little maintenance, although it'd be a good idea to be occasionally cleaning or dusting. There are rare instances, of course, these are mechanical systems, where we have unusual impediments or shapes or sizes, and those become more of an issue. And then there's always the mistakes that are made inside a studio. Somebody turns and doesn't realize that it's there and manages to do something to it. That's particularly, it's more likely to happen, I say, where we've got inclined windows. I don't know if you had this, Joe, but I know a bunch of the guys there would hit their heads on the windows in Vegas because you walk up close and you forget that it's inclined.
Yeah, I saw a few people do that.
Yeah. Yeah, OSHA says we should wear hard hats by inclined windows, I think.
Right.
So if the application fits, do you rent these units? Like probably not overseas, but US standard sizes. Is that something that you guys have done or do?
We've never found a place for that for a couple of reasons. First is they tend to be permanent installations.
Okay.
Although I don't see any reason why we couldn't lease them for a permanent installation as well, which would bring down the upfront cost, but just have us on the hook for maintenance for a long term.
Yeah, I asked because if there was an event going on in a building for a day and you had lighting issues, and then you didn't have to buy it, was that possible?
Yeah, it's not something we've done, but it's definitely possible and something that we could design.
Okay.
Maybe something we attach to a truss on a temporary basis.
Mm-hmm.
The only one I remember doing temporary was the one we did for don't know if it was Olympics or the World Cup in Brazil that we shipped out. It was a huge one that it was temporary but a manual as well.
Yeah, well, that was just the material, Pedro. We didn't have anything operational there, and you're right, that was temporary. But I don't know. I think they probably would have cut it up and discarded it there if Brazil didn't insist on them taking everything out. Joe probably knows more about that than the rest of us, because he's probably got it in storage somewhere.
No, that was a new bar project, so I'd have to ask him.
Okay. Last I heard, it was in storage somewhere with everything else from there.
Damn Brazilians.
But they were talking about the crate that it went down in from coast to coast. Joe, that crate was 26 feet long, I believe.
Oh.
Yeah, I know. It was a crazy shipment. Anybody else? Well, if nothing else, thanks everybody for coming.